Hey, everybody. Welcome to Master the Shots. It is Thursday, November the 26th, 2020. It's actually Thanksgiving Day, and we decided we're just going to say, screw it, get over our little turkey coma and hang out with my buddy John Darko Chapman out of Philly and my buddy Eddie EA Visuals down here in Arkansas with me. What's up, guys? How are y'all doing tonight?
What's up, man?
Pretty good, man. Hope everybody's having a good night. Happy Thanksgiving to you both.
Happy Turkey Day.
Happy Turkey Day.
Of course, I'll be the one on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, listen to you. You're throwing like a little Southern twang on there, and you're up in Philly. Come on now.
I'm talking normal. What are you talking about? It's a weird echo.
All right. Well, guys, for those of you who are not familiar with John is a professional photographer, digital artist, and cinematographer based in Philly. And he's got some beautiful art and work we'll be going through here shortly. But let's go ahead and get a little intro from you, John. Tell us what you're all about, what you do, how you got to where you're at.
Yeah. So that's a long.
Give us the abbreviated, the Cliff Notes, man.
Sure. Okay. So the short version of that I could possibly give is I started off as an illustrator, actually. And this is going back to high school. I won a couple of awards, and I got to do an apprenticeship thing for DC Comics. And didn't last very long. It was like about 17 to about 19. And from there, that's kind of what got me into eventually computers and graphic design and that kind of work and so forth. And then that kind of spilled over later into how I got into composite work and stuff like that. I went to school for film, Temple University. So I did some stuff there. So from that was kind of like I would have friends who were working on films and projects and stuff and cats doing music and all this kind of stuff, and got lucky and met a lot of people that became semi-successful in different ways, and music artists and directors and actors and stuff. And so people would ask me to do different work for them. And so from there, just kind of rolled. I started, they would send me pictures and different things, and I would do composite work and put stuff together. And, it just turned into a thing. And before I knew it, I was getting calls from a lot of different companies asking me to, do various work for them and things like that. And it just kind of went from there. So it was like an off and on thing for years. I would do projects here and there. They would send me photos and stuff, and then I would just do composite work. I still hadn't touched the camera as far as photography went. I was just doing video and film and stuff. And so the rest of the time, I was running around shooting, short film projects, stuff like that. I get lucky and jump on projects here and there for like TV shows and commercials and stuff like that, and music videos. I was also doing like stunts and stuff like that. So it was just a real weird roundabout thing in like the smaller version of Hollywood and things I got involved in over the years. So yeah, I didn't fully pick up to become like a straight up photographer until much, much later, till I was like my 30s. Mm-hmm. So, I'm almost 40 now. So yeah, I'd say it's been about 6 years since I like really went into photography and doing straight up photography. Before then, it was all just video and stuff like that.
So I met you shortly after you got into photography then.
Pretty much.
Wow. I didn't realize that. I thought you had been at least at it for a while before you and I kind of bumped into each other.
Nah, a lot of it, like I said, it was just, I was really good at graphic work and composite work, mm-hmm. coloring and all that kind of stuff, and grading and all that. So, people would send me projects and things, and then I would put them together, or I would work for firms and companies every now and then. People would put me on and stuff like that, or, hey, join our team. We're working on this project for Ubisoft or some movie or whatever. Mm-hmm. And, I would just help out in a sense, and I would jump on and work on the projects with them. And it just kind of went from there. So people just would hit me every now and then. And like, so jumping into photography, it was always like, that's easy, whatever. Especially coming from like a video background, like sometimes video guys and film guys, we tend to look at photographers like, that's easy. And it's not at all. It is most definitely its own trade and respect and everything that goes to it. And when I first started, I was terrible as far as shooting my own stuff.
We all are. Come on.
I know, right? Because I was relying on just all my disciplines from video, and it's completely different. And I was like everybody starting a lot of times afraid of strobes and all that kind of stuff. I had a huge tungsten collection of lights and RE lights and stuff that I use for all the stuff I do. So I was using that and trying to skate by, and and then finally I had to just hunker down and learn, man. It just kind of became an obsession. You know what I mean?
Nice.
Shooting ever since.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep. Cool. Cool. Well, Eddie, since you are not familiar with John on the same level I am, I'm going to let you go in and hit him up with some questions right off the bat.
Yes, sir. So my first question is, well, kind of a small little topic here. Normally, everybody that joins us on the cast here, they all have a big photography background, right? I got a video background as well. Love doing video, but I'm a little bit opposite. I actually started with photography first and then went into video. It sounds like you started with video, went into photography, which is it's completely different. Just like you said, man, even when you start learning photography first and jump into video, getting into video is a whole different game. So first question for you is, what do you prefer to do? Do you prefer to do video, or do you prefer to do photography?
They're kind of the same for me. Yeah. I don't really have a preference anymore. Of course, before it was video because I was more comfortable with it, better at it. But now, honestly, I don't really have a preference. They're just different disciplines. They're different things. A lot of times with a lot of clients that I work with, because they know I do both, they try and get me to do both. And I don't do it. It's one thing I don't do. Because I don't like to mix the two. It's too much work running around. Because I tell them, they're like, you think I'm going to be shooting with a video camera and I can just pop out a photography camera and take pictures on the side, and it doesn't work that way. Yeah. And so, I love them both. They're just different disciplines, and I try and treat them both with the same kind of respect.
No, yeah, I don't think a lot of people actually realize that. I'm on the same boat. A lot of people hire me for photography, and then they're like, oh, hey, I see you do video. You've done video. You're like, we'll say weddings. They're like, you want to go ahead and do our video for our wedding? I'm like,
yeah, I've gotten that.
You know how difficult it is to just take your brain and change it from like a photo to video and focus on all that. So I totally get it. My next question is, so how do you feel, videography has actually helped your photography when it comes to like the editing or just lighting, everything in general?
It's mainly helped with not so much editing per se, because it's a still picture compared to, chopping up a whole film project or whatever, or multiple stills in a sense you could say. So that's not the same so much, but definitely color grading. So once again, like I was able to cheat real easy in a sense in the beginning when I first started. So like, even though I was terrible at shooting photography, I could kind of get away with it because I could cover it up with a lot of editing. And most people couldn't tell. Those who were really good could tell, everyone else. Yeah. So so color grading is a big one. Composition, position of things, lighting. Lighting's not the same. They're very, very different. That's probably the biggest difference between the work. But having an understanding of lighting in film and video, the biggest difference is that I know how to light a scene, where I notice photographers tend to focus on lighting the subject.
Right.
And so they tend to lose a lot of other things to what creates the scene and the moment and whatever, where in film and video, that's the first thing you're thinking about. Yeah. So I kind of think backwards than how other photographers think towards how you set up a shot and other things like that.
Sure. So then,
which actually, sorry, man, go ahead.
Go ahead, Josh.
No, I was going to say, which actually is a great thing to start looking into, learning, and focusing on as a photographer. Because, I mean, other than shooting in a studio on a backdrop, if you're shooting on location or, trying to create a scene, you need to be aware of the entire scene. and how it is being exposed and how that is conveying what you want in the image as well. So, that does kind of cross over with cinematography because, I mean, obviously cinematography, you're creating that scene and you are definitely more aware of it. But if you're going to be a location shooter or a lifestyle shooter or any kind of shooter that shoots a scene that your subject is included in, you have to be fully aware of that scene as well and what is exposing and all of the lighting conditions, etc. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'll add to that in saying that especially if you're shooting, I mean, it doesn't matter really whether you're shooting landscape, whether you're shooting subjects, it really doesn't matter. Like at the end of the day, you'll hear people say this all the time that are talented, successful photographers. I mean, you're telling a story in a picture. Mm-hmm. So coming from a film background, you're coming from a background of telling stories. Like I'm a storyteller. So, you learn how to set up scenes, set up the type of composition just a little bit different than I notice how a lot of photographers start out, where they're just kind of worried and focused on just getting the subject or whatever it is they're shooting right. And they tend to just focus on that and lose the story. Yep. And then sometimes I see the opposite. I see especially a lot of kids these days who pick up the camera and want to get started. I see they have a really good idea and sense and eye of artistically what they want to capture, but then it's the vice versa. They don't have the skills to make it the way they really want to make it. So, it's a give and take. But yeah. So
awesome, love it. So looking at your work, your photography work here on screen, I do notice that your work's really bright. You have a lot of color to it, there's a lot of vibrant colors there. Does your video work pretty similar to that, or do you feel like two different styles?
No, it's very similar. My video works really bright and vibrant as much as I can because I shoot a lot of music video stuff and commercials. Mm-hmm. So they tend to go that way. The film stuff is a little bit different. I'm usually following more like a set of rules with that, to how, for instance, if I'm working on a project and it's like running through Avid and they're sending me work from wherever and this other thing there, then it's a little bit different. So for instance, I'm working on a sizzle reel now for this Black superhero graphic novel thing that they made, and they hired me to shoot the sizzle reel and put it together for them to try and market it and sell it further. So that'll follow a lot more stricter rules. So the color grade will be very specific. Because they want it to, that client wants it to look more like a movie. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I won't be able to do me as much. I'll be following more of a real stricter color grade.
Awesome. All right. So I'm going to do a quick welcome to all the people joining us live. And somebody's actually posted a question here. So, guys, I just want to say thank you to everybody that's joining us live. I see we've got Darko Gorank, I believe. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, brother. He's up in Manitoba, Canada. He's visiting us here on YouTube. We got Lisa. We've got John Harville, Stephen Buller, and Martin down in Australia all checking us out live here. I see a lot more on the live feed. They're just not commenting. Those are the people I can see their names at the moment. So, But Darko from up in Canada actually asked a question. He says, do you storyboard your projects, and do you have pre-meets with your subjects when you do?
Yes and no. It depends. It depends what I'm working on. So for instance, I'm shooting a composite shoot soon for a good friend of mine, photographer, who technically is my landlord as well, to the new studio that I'm at. Shout out to Keith. I think he might be watching. So for instance, he wants a really elaborate composite job. So he sent me very much kind of a script of what he wanted in the shot. Then from there, I'll be communicating back and forth with him towards putting it together. And then a lot of times I have to first design and lay out the background before we even go to shooting. So I know how the lighting is and the setup and the look before we even get to that. So I'll probably do a sketch out of it beforehand, and then shoot it. But not everyone goes like that. Sometimes it might be just a storyboard. Usually for small jobs, let's say it's like a a model that hires me, and they just want to do like some crazy composite thing. I get cosplay girls that come to me sometimes, stuff like that, or whatever. A lot of times, stuff like that, it'll be, you know, they'll tell me what they are looking for, and I'll just say, hey, send me. I'll tell them to go to Pinterest or something like that, and kind of put together a lookbook based on that. That's a good example right there. That picture. That was a makeup artist that wanted me to do kind of a Hunger Games kind of thing. And so she had the idea for how she wanted to do the makeup. And then from there, I just had her put together a Pinterest of just some different ideas and then went from there.
Yeah, I love using Pinterest for mood boards.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Cool. All right. All of y'all that are watching live, if y'all have questions for John or me or Eddie, just drop a comment because we actually see those comments pop up and I'll share the questions on the screen and we'll jump on them and answer them for you. So feel free to throw your questions in the comments, guys, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. Cool. All right. Eddie, anything else come to mind you want to ask real quick?
No, I'm good. I'm excited to listen more, about John's story. So all good on my end.
Awesome. John, I know you had mentioned that a couple of your friends had asked you if they could get some questions answered, but they weren't going to be able to come on. So if you want to give a shout out to them and say what their question is and answer it, go for it, man.
Most def. Hold on 1 second. Let me find them. He asked me on Instagram.
By the way, guys, if y'all want to check out John on Instagram, it's John Darko Chapman. So I'll just throw the banner at the bottom so y'all can see it. Where's it at? Just look at the ticker across the bottom of the screen and his Instagram handle will pop up here in just a second. Y'all can check him out on Instagram. Right there at the bottom, you can see it now. John Darko Chapman.
All right. So I never pronounce his name right. He's going to kill me when he watches this tomorrow. He really going to kill me. Hold on. Let me get his name right. Hold on.
All right. I'm going to answer this one real quick.
I'm not even
Darko, yes, Adobe is one of the primary suites of software that all of us use. I know that John uses a couple other programs when he's doing his video editing. But for most of the photography stuff, it is all Adobe.
Yep. Adobe. I've been using Luminar a lot more lately.
Yeah.
I've been incorporating it more into the workflow. I like the way it handles color.
Yeah.
A little bit. It's a little bit different than Photoshop. So I guess because of the AI or whatever. So
you know what? I do tend to jump into Luminar and I'll jump on that AI enhance. But I use it more for just ideas. Like I'll crank it up and see what it does. Mm-hmm. And if I like it, a lot of times it feels a little heavy-handed or a little rough in how it does it. I'll then go back into Photoshop and mimic what it did. So it's a little bit more refined.
Yeah, it's funny. I haven't really used the AI enhancer or even like the skin retouch a lot. Mm-hmm. The skin retouch is like okay to me. It's not that amazing as some people try.
Yeah, no, I actually did a comparison video of the AI skin retouch versus doing it straight up in, the good old way with frequency separation, dodge and burn in Photoshop. So
yeah, it's okay to me. But the biggest thing I liked was sometimes I'll play a little bit with the LUTs as so usually when I do like a full main photo that I'm doing an edit.
Yeah.
I'll usually go through 2 to 3 sets of color grades, depending. So I might do like one that's just like a color correction and getting everything straight, especially if it's like composite work, because you kind of want to start everything flat and then build the color up from there so everything matches. And that's how you start getting the colors to look like they go better together a little faster than some of the other tricks that you see people teach on Photoshop that takes forever.
Yeah, that was one of the things that impressed me the most whenever I first met you was all of your composite work, because I had no comprehension of how you made everything tie together and look like it was meant to go together. Mm-hmm. And I actually learned that, it was the color grading and the LUTs and everything that tied that stuff together. I learned that from you. So
thanks, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a couple of things. I don't want to teach a class.
No, don't teach the class. Don't teach the class. Actually, we can jump to other questions because I think that kind of leads us into the main topic tonight, which we're going to follow up towards the end of this podcast with. So let's go ahead and just grab another question. I actually threw Martin up here on the screen, and you can see that, right, John?
Yes.
Yeah, it says, "Hi, John. How do you find quoting for your work compared to 5 years ago? I'm just getting back into video, and there seems to be a big difference."
So this is a good question. I want to hear if we're pretty on par with
for video.
Yeah,
mainly for video. Okay. It depends, is what I'm going to say. So first things first, as I'm pretty sure everybody knows on here has been, we all working with professionals or learning from professionals. Never have a set price, of course.
Yep.
Right? Especially with video, you're gonna run into a whole headache if you have set prices. And I know a lot of kids that start off doing that. Though that's how they start the little hustle, especially with the music video stuff. And they'll have $500 a video. And I'm like, kid, what are you doing? Like, anyway, that's a whole nother thing. Anyway,
I'm building a portfolio.
I swear to God. Anyway, but basically, I'll tell you this: it's not always as what's the word I should say? Cool as they try and make it sound sometimes, where I'll see a lot of professionals that talk about budgeting, and the first thing they'll go is you got to ask them what their budget is. It's not always that simple, depending on who you're dealing with. They might not really have an idea of the budget because they don't know what goes into making film to make it work. So I'll get that a lot of times, especially from music artists. And this is even music artists who've been in the game for a while, have management, music label, whatever. They still don't know how much it costs because they're not filmmakers. They don't know everything that's going to come into it. So the thing becomes, usually when I sit with any client, it doesn't matter what it is. The first thing I just break down to them is, what is your idea? What are you trying to get across? What is the outcome of what you're looking for? You're looking for it to do X, Y, Z, so forth. From that, get the information. From there, what I usually do is I'll compile the budget based off of, I kind of work my way backwards. I'll usually start from location to who's ever needed to, let me rephrase that, location, actors or talent or whatever is needed, pre-production as far as, crew, whatever I need for that and so forth. And that's kind of how I build out the budget that I need. So how much is all that going to cost and so forth. To kind of give you a perfect example, I just got a call the other day for shooting Paris Fashion Week, Philly Fashion Week in New York. They want to do like a big live stream broadcast thing for all of them. And they want them to run like simultaneous, more like a TV show where everything can cut in and out, where literally they wanted to cut out like per area, which I'm like, that's crazy. But so, they're still putting it together. And these are people who've been doing this for years. They know how to do this. They still don't know the budget of how that's going to cost and what they need to do. So the thing becomes, okay, first I told them, write me out a wish list of what you want. From the wish list, I'm then going to go back to what I need to go back to and see how much it's going to cost for crew, see how much everybody's prices are. Because if I'm working with multiple cameramen, people tend to have different prices. How do you want this to look based on how that's looked? Okay, do we need to then get certain kind of cameras and those cameras all have to be the same? Or can we rock with different cameras? Or so, all that has to be determined before we can even, compile the budget.
And most importantly, how much do you want to pay yourself?
Exactly. Well, your price, you should have, in a sense of, let me rephrase that. So this is how I determine price when it comes to film and video, because it is a different beast. Because once you get into editing and some other things, for instance, like the superhero thing that I'm working on, I'm doing a little bit of everything for it. I'm doing the editing. I'm doing a bit of the audio engineering. I'm like, it's a lot of work. So I base that on time. So I give kind of average of time and then kind of a workup from time. I try to get it down to clients that are smaller as much as I can to a fixed budget and then a little wiggle room within that budget. And then for clients that I know that have a decent amount of money, then it's just, per hour of whatever. Mm-hmm. So it just depends a little bit, but you can't just approach it one way, the way that a lot of people try and make it sound, where it's like, you just go up to them and ask them what their budget is. It doesn't work that way. Yeah. It really doesn't. So you got to kind of keep that in mind.
So let me ask you another question here, John. You're speaking on big projects, right? So my question here for you is, how do you feel about, and this on the videography side of things, how do you feel about these the YouTubers, right? Let's look at YouTube nowadays and video. Those guys that are a one-man team, kind of whether it's like B-roll or shooting small to 8-10-second brand commercials, stuff of that nature. What advice do you have for them when it comes to pricing? Since again, they're a one-man team. That's what a lot of my followers are. Is those people that kind of do everything by themselves. So what advice do you have for them?
It's still the same, honestly. You want to know exactly what they're trying to accomplish. You want to know what the vision, the idea, the how we're going to execute this. Before I do anything, I start there. When somebody, you get and trust me, I get small clients too. I still work with small clients, small music artists, music videos where it might only be 2, 3, 4 people I'm working with, that kind of stuff. So even with that kind of stuff, it's still like, I don't ask them, the first thing they're always going to ask is, what's your price? What's your pricing? What's your pricing? I'll say, we can get to that, texting or whatever. Let me know, what do you have in mind? What is your vision? What are you trying to accomplish? What is the thing you want to create? So once they start laying that out, then I can start computing and putting some things together. So I always tell people that's the first thing to start with. The second thing I would tell you is do have a range. All right. So, if you got to be real with yourself and real with the area. This is another thing that I don't like sometimes when you hear professionals talk about this stuff and they always start mentioning like real set things in stone that aren't true. Like if you're in Bumble F wherever, where it's a small area, it's not a lot of people, they're not a big art town. Like I'm from Philly. Philly sounds big to people who are from even smaller towns, but Philly is a working class town. They're not used to, Hollywood or LA or New York prices with stuff. So I can't necessarily approach somebody in Philly, even if it's a decent sized company. You know what I mean? Like I got a call not long ago to work again with a brewing company that's pretty successful in Philly. But I still can't come to them with the same type of prices I would working with somebody in New York or Chicago or wherever. Mm-hmm. So you got to be real about that. And so I try and have a range of prices based off of certain things. So for instance, for commercials, for instance, my prices start anywhere from 800 all the way up to 10,000. So then from that range is then how I scope based off of how much work, how much time, and so forth. And you got to know how to kind of configure that. And then, you write it out, Excel spreadsheet, however you want to do it until you get the hang of it. It doesn't matter. But, you got to kind of be honest and real with your customers and the idea of prices as well as with yourself to how those pricing should go. Because I see people try and do it all the time. I know cats even from Philly who, they may have shot a big video for whoever in LA, and then they come back and they go, yeah, my prices are this now. And then they start struggling to get work again. They can't figure out. I'm like, bro, Philly can't pay that. So, you got to kind of keep those things in mind and just, determine what you're trying to do. So that would be the best thing. I would say try and have a range and a scale based off of the level of work that they're doing. Know your price of your scale for yourself and then calculate everything back from there. Like I said, the easiest way I found is start from location to talent to crew all the way back to you. And it's easier to determine the price range of what you need to do.
It's funny that you say people from Philly try to get LA pricing. I was on the same boat when I got here from California, from LA here in Arkansas. I was like, I'm gonna try to pull these LA pricing I was pulling in LA. Boy, I was shut down quick. So,
oh, you and me both.
Hey, we all have at some point, man. And it ranges. It ranges no matter where. I found, here's a real weird thing I found. I was expecting to charge more when I went to Europe. Found out I had to charge lesser.
A lot less.
A lot less. Because Europe's so expensive over there. they just don't have it like that, because living in Europe is like living in New York and LA, no matter where you're at.
Yeah.
So it's different.
Cool, man. Everybody's interested in video work in some aspect of it right now.
Oh man,
but that's cool because I mean you're one.
I just sent you video stuff.
There's nothing wrong because I mean it all conveys, because I mean it's master the shots, and I mean when I think about that, cinematography is getting the shot also, you know. So
yeah. So here, Josh, when we started this podcast, we said we were going to cover video too.
Exactly. John,
yeah, I'll answer any questions anybody has. I mean, it's a lot to it when it comes to video and film work and all that stuff. I guess.
By the way, did you find your friend's question?
I did. So I hope I pronounced his name right. Shadavan. I don't know if I'm saying that right. That's my man's from France, Paris. His question was the different types of model release forms, and if you're doing a shoot with a model with intention of selling the prints at later stage, what are the conditions to respect?
Okay.
Oh man, this is a detailed question here.
It's a good question though, because I mean, as photographers, we all deal with shooting models at some point in time. I mean, there's family photographers that have never shot models. They've just had lots of volunteers and whatever. But I mean, it's a great question for the majority of photographers, because at some point in time you are shooting, you know, even if it's just trade for print personal projects to help build out a portfolio, you know, you are working with models, and you definitely want to have model releases and model contracts. Yep. So, and I know we got John on here, so we're going to let John kind of give his interpretation of this right off the bat.
So yeah. So where do we go with models? All right, let's break this down. So first thing I'll say is, yes, you should have a release form, even if it's a trade for pay, even if you're shooting a model, whoever, who's the first time, they never even shot before, still have a release form. Probably one of the biggest reasons for that, which was like a whole thing I got into a heated discussion with not too long ago, is because so many, especially female models, no disrespect, and OnlyFans.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into
it. Seriously. It needs to be talked about.
And what tends to happen nowadays is that you're shooting a young model, whoever, male or female necessarily, and you don't know that they are taking those photos somewhere else and making money off of it. And they're not giving you anything for that work that you've done, as well as a lot of times. Here's the crazy part I'm finding is that I end up having to school them, because I'm like, you do realize now you got to pay taxes on that, right? Mm-hmm. So you might as well start having some tax write-offs. So you should pay me. So, you know, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's a real thing, man, and it happens a lot. We were just going over this the other day. We have a group thing for everybody in the studio that we work out of. Shout out to Studio 2E and Gregory Max and Keith and John, everybody, and Edward. I don't know if anybody's watching.
Nice. They probably are. We got quite a few people popping on. I see quite a few on YouTube and on Facebook popping on here. So we're doing good.
Nice. So yeah. So, you know, it's a serious thing now where you just don't know. You don't know where they're taking the pictures, where they're going. And honestly, vice versa. As far as the models go, you don't know where the photographer, especially if you're new to this and you know who you're shooting with, you don't know what they're doing with those pictures. Yep. And I've had models come to me all the time and say, like, my picture showed up on a Chinese this and the thing that and everything else. So you want to have paperwork, sometimes even both ways.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just blocked for this, right, Josh?
What was that?
I was just blocked for this. Was it?
You were. Oh well. I mean,
no. It's funny that you bring up the OnlyFans, John, simply because, I mean, a lot of times you got to spend a lot of time schooling these girls on how exactly all that works, and a lot of, again, I don't want to put anybody in an age group here, right? But those models trying to get into it, and OnlyFans has really blown up in the past since the Rona.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of girls are selling
people trying to make some money.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these girls are selling these photos. I was in the OnlyFans game as a photographer, more on the teaching side of things and stuff. But a lot of these girls are selling these photos for a good chunk of money. Believe it or not, these guys are out there paying a decent amount of money, and a lot of the time, the models don't know that they have to get some form of release form or agreement from the photographer stating that they can actually go and do that. Mm-hmm. Now, on the other side, I find it funny where, again, I was in the OnlyFans game, but I find it funny when the model's like, "Oh, well, why is my picture on your site?" Let's get into that. So yeah, my release forms actually cover OnlyFans and like Patreon, stating that, hey, if we shoot, whatever reason, some of these pictures might end up on my OnlyFans for teaching purposes. Again, I keep mine on the classy side, right? When it comes, I do a lot of editing on there and like teaching and what I do, so forth. But yeah, it's a lot of teaching of these models that you definitely can do with those, man.
Yep. Yeah. When it comes down to model release / model contract, I know I've given a lot of people my model releases and contracts because they ask, but there is a very large section. I mean, there's the general model release, but then there's a whole nother section that they actually have to initial that is your rights. And I line it out to exactly what their rights of usage are and clearly state that outside of these rights, there is another contract to be negotiated and signed. So if they take my pictures and use them for OnlyFans or Patreon or anything else without a whole separate contract where I'm being compensated, I just have one more recourse saying they were fully aware of this. This wasn't just, ignorance on their part. This was stated before we ever shot. And here they are initialing and acknowledging that they understand this. That way, if I ever have to take it to a court of law to get compensated, it's just one more tick in my favor where no, they can't play dumb. They were educated and informed of this, and they agreed to it ahead of time.
Yeah, I also think it's super important that photographers kind of do a little bit of research and actually figure out how much these photos are selling for when you take a picture. Because I shoot with a girl on a model on consistent basis that she's big on TikTok. I'll say that she's local. She's big on TikTok. She can easily get up to $300 to $400 for one photo, easily, which is mind blowing to me. There's definitely a lot of research that needs to be done there on both ends. So that's the advice that I have on that.
Yeah, and you got to be real with it too, because I mean, at the end of the day, I've seen models try to go, oh, well, they're just photos, whatever. I'm like, yeah, but you are looking to bring a photographer in because you want a higher quality photo. That higher quality photo transitions over to you making more money. Period. So, yeah. So, but yeah, so I would say, as far as how you should approach that, release forms, all that other stuff, I'll add something else to it because I've gotten this question several times. I've gotten this from my assistant. I've gotten this from Siobhan, who was from Paris, that I asked the question for, and so forth. Of also just how to approach some things with models, towards wanting to work with them, and whatever type of photo work you're trying to do with them. One thing I always say is when you approach the model, I usually approach models I don't get into necessarily even pricing and all this stuff right away. I usually talk a lot about concept and the idea and what the execution is and what you want to accomplish, and the theme, or whatever concept you have for the project, and see if they're really someone that's interested in that, and then try and tie the models. I mean, it's very easy to scroll through someone's feed and see what they're into, and then try and match that with so forth. Because I do the type of work I do, I get a lot of models that contact me, and they want to do, can you put a dragon next to me, and all kinds of stuff.
I want to be in Game of Thrones.
Exactly. So so from there is kind of where it's a good place to start if you're trying to, if it's a particular model you want to work with, and maybe you feel like, I don't know, like you're out of her league or something. It's not necessarily like bring them conceptual work that they're either into or necessarily they haven't done and want to add to their portfolio and into yours. Just don't hit them up and, hey, you want to shoot and all that kind of stuff and whatever. Because, yeah, then they'll turn into, FU paint or whatever the situation may be of what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. Cool,
So
man.
I'm not sure if Josh actually saw this question up there, John, but John Harville actually has a question here for you that we actually skipped. But it says,
I was actually holding that.
Yeah.
When we lead into the color talk.
Perfect. Then we'll wait on that one.
Yeah. So let's give a shout out to some other people, though, because we got Gregory Max is watching us on Facebook, and he said, watching great content. Thank you very much, brother. We appreciate that.
Very known, famous photographer out of Philly. Greg's been around.
Yes, sir. So a little shout out to him. Find him on Facebook. Find him on Instagram. All right. There is a question that kind of where we've been talking leads into this now. So I'm going to pull up John Silfie's question. And it says, this is for all of you. Was there a time or an event where your work was up to par to be priced as a pro?
Say it again.
So basically he's asking, when did you feel that your work was up to par to say, I'm a professional and start charging quote unquote professional prices?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I have a feeling I know where John is coming from, because John Silfie's over the last couple years that I've known him, his work has progressed rapidly to where he is producing beautiful portraits and headshots now and works with a lot of amazing up and coming models. And he's kind of trying to figure out that transition into becoming professional. So,
gotcha.
Yeah.
I guess I'll start with what I've kind of learned is that because as photographers, we tinker over our work like crazy and everything else, and then we get whatever responses, social media, whatever, and then you start thinking you're big dog and all that, or I'm gonna start charging this now, or I'm a pro now. The best thing I can say is don't judge it so much on the quality of your work necessarily, because let's be real, there's a lot of photographers who necessarily, you can say for various reasons, are not necessarily that good,
but they're making good bank.
A combination of their business, the skills they picked up and what they're shooting per se, and how they carry that over to the client and keeping their clients happy is why they can determine the prices of what they charge. So at the end of the day, the best thing I can say is don't so much judge it on the quality of your work. Judge it on the quality of the client and what kind of clients are you able to move up. And if I get the question also, well, how do I know I should move up? And the answer is you don't, just move up, see what happens.
Exactly. You start asking for a price, and if you can't get that price, then either your market, who you're marketing to, isn't right, or what you're producing isn't being seen as holding that value yet. But the thing is that for you specifically, John, not John Darko, but John Silfies, your work is excellent, and you should be asking high prices. And if you don't get them, kind of start looking at your market and, see if you need to start marketing elsewhere, or if you need to really work on your networking so you get in the right market. So,
yeah. So I would say also, sometimes it's also good to apply the shoot for the stars and you might get a moon strategy, meaning that go for some bigger things that you even necessarily think are a little out of your ballpark. The reason being is because it'll give you a decent scale back to where you're going to be at or what you need to work towards.
Right.
Especially in price range.
Eddie, you got something you want to say about the pricing as a quote unquote pro?
Pricing's hard, man. You guys kind of touched on both of them. A lot of times your market kind of dictates, like I said, the value of your work. That's how I see it anyways. I know. Again, when I was in LA, I was charging and getting what I wanted to get. But when I came to Arkansas, I took a big hit. again, it's the value of the work, right? It's also the market that you're in and the people that are around you, the other photographers that are around you, what they're pricing their work at, and so forth. A lot of it goes into it, but I think you guys kind of hit both of the topics on the head.
One thing I will say though is to kind of disagree with what you just said on looking at the photographers around you and what they're marketing at. Yeah, it's good to see what other people are charging, but that doesn't mean you have to compete on price with them. If you're producing excellent work that is on their par or higher, and you're providing a better experience, you can still ask for a higher price. You just have to be able to convey the value in what you offer to your market so that your market's willing to pay that price.
Yeah, and I agree with that. That's a better way of explaining it. So,
Yep.
Yeah, especially now, it's so many genres, so many different things, so many different styles, so many things of what people are looking for. So to try and scale that by other people's stuff, I mean, you can to an extent, like certain stuff, like maybe like wedding photography, stuff like that. But like, let's say you're doing like a lot of like ad work and stuff like that. You're trying to get into brand work and so forth. It's all over the place.
Yeah,
it's different stuff for different folks. You know, it's really different strokes for different folks. So
yeah. Cool. All right. I think we've kind of hit everybody's question except for John Harville's, which I've been saving as we lead in, because the one thing I want to do is we've been scrolling back and forth through all of these images here. And what I really want you to do, John, is I want you to tell me a few pictures that you want me to pull up and have you talk about it and just kind of give us what your mindset was, how you approached it, why you did it this way, you know, so we can get into that and then lead into our final discussion, you know.
Gotcha.
So is there any specific image out of the ones you sent me you want me to pull up?
Just pick one.
Well, I'm going to go right back to the one I just had, because that one right there is probably one of the most dynamic of the shots that you sent me.
Thank you. So that is Miss Happy Couture.
Of course, I love that woman.
Yeah, you remember Hap?
I do. She's an
shout
awesome
out
lady.
to Happy Couture. I don't know, maybe she's watching. I hope so.
Yeah.
Happy is probably one of the most talented designers I have ever met in my life. She's a handful. She's a diva.
Oh yeah. But the thing is you're like, all right, here's a fistful of garbage. Make magic.
Happy is really one of a kind. She really is. She's a fashion designer, but she specializes in art couture. And what makes her amazing, man, is that Happy will show up to the shoot with just like trash bags and cases of just stuff. And then she just goes and just puts it together. And a lot of this stuff she bought from like hardware stores and all kinds of stuff. So for instance, the main person you're seeing in the shot, those are actually zip ties. So that's a jacket that she made out of like wool or something like that, some kind of cloth and yarn knitting that's all knitted up. And then it's woven in and out of zip ties. So like the stuff that she creates is absolutely amazing. Happy is everything. And right now, Happy is slowly the doctors did not give her a whole lot of time.
I was not going to bring that up because I didn't know if it was cool to talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, she talks about it a lot.
Yeah.
She is struggling, but we are all hopeful that she will pull through. She is battling a very aggressive form of cancer, brain cancer that she's dealing with.
And she has for several years now.
Yeah. Our hopes and prayers and everything go out to her, man. And to see even her going through that, and she still works like a beast at this, and to the point sometimes where she can't even work, and she has helpers and people around her that help her and put this together for her, and she's absolutely amazing, man. So shout out. But
seeing her work is amazing. I have been there and seen her work firsthand many times, and John is not exaggerating. Like, she will show up with piles of literally like garbage and whatever, and then she literally just on the fly creates the most amazing like outfits and designs. It just comes out of her. Don't know where it comes from.
Like, talented is crazy. But anyway, so basically the way I approach something like this, it's a bit of a composite job. This was shot in a studio on just a regular white background. they were shot together like that, but they were actually shot on a really weird wide angle. Mm-hmm. So the one to the left of the screen, I had to actually reposition her to fit coordinated to the shot and everything else. So that was a pain in the butt, especially against the zip ties. That wasn't fun.
Oh yeah. Until
oh yeah. But basically after that, you know, the background is a pretty simple composite of clouds and so forth. It's actually several pictures. It's basically the clouds, a grunge type of background to give more texture. I think one other thing, I can't remember. And then from there, basically just kind of going in. So basically the way I approach color and composite work. So this is a good tip. This is a freebie right out the gate. Here's the best way I can tell people, because I know a lot of photographers want to do composite work so bad. They try and get into it. They can't figure it out. They can't get it right. They watch all these tutorials. Yeah, I ain't gonna say no names. We know these tutorials, and I'm not hating on them because they're all very talented at what they do. But I'll be real, there's a reason they show it the way that they show it. They show a lot of things the way that they show to make them complicated, so you come back. Mm-hmm. So you have to keep coming back to them. It's not always that complicated. A lot of composite work and pulling it off correctly is just a combination, a little bit of planning and a little bit of just understanding how to really set up the shot. What's up, Val? Regular at my studio.
Yep.
The best thing I can tell you is this. One, when I shoot composite work, I usually start with taking a lot of times my picture profile and turning down the saturation to create almost a log effect, the same that you would in video. So those of you who know video, you usually are shooting in digital work, you're shooting in a log format, right? Yep. Log is a very desaturated, very high dynamic range way of shooting to preserve color digitally. So I very much kind of recreate that a little bit in photography. You don't have to do it so much in photography because, you know, Photoshop and photography can hold a lot more than video can as far as the information of a shot, just because it's a still. But you pretty much want to, I kind of recreate that a little bit. So this shot, if you look at the original, would be very desaturated. The background, I would also then go and desaturate. So what I do is I pull everything back and everything is lined out to where it's a very flat image. And then from there, I start adding the color little by little by little. And I just start piecing it. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll go through 1, 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 4 layers of color grading. And color grading, and that's just really understanding color theory. Yep. And just really going from there. I don't want to go too deep into color theory. We'll be here all day.
That's a week-long course.
Yeah, color theory is a whole thing, man. But you don't have to go crazy with it. I come from a comic book background and other stuff, and I like my stuff crazy, vibrant, and that's just my personality and how I like stuff. Yep. I tell people who are starting off in color grading and trying to understand color theory and so forth, if you look at most films, most really well shot films, it's 2 colors.
Yep.
That's it. It's 2 colors. If you go and look, I don't care if you want to turn on YouTube, what are the best shot films of all time, whatever, yada, yada. Most of them you'll see are 2 colors. And especially nowadays, you look at a cinematographer like, what's his name? Gian Pover, I think. He works with not Guillermo del Toro, Denis Malouf, that's shooting the new Dune and so forth. Yep. His style is very much 2 colors. That's all they use. So whatever the shot is, it's a 2-color platform, and then they kind of space it out from there. And I tell everyone to start the same like that. Just start with 2 colors. All right, I want this thing to be orange and whatever. You don't even got to be the right color theory format.
Yeah, it does, because if they don't complement each other, you're creating a train wreck.
It is, but it's a good place to start when you're trying to understand this.
Yeah,
trying to grow in it. When because what happens is how most photographers start, you take your picture, you throw it up on Lightroom or whatever, and you just start messing with slides until you like what you see, kind of do. And I try and tell people to get away from that and get into picking specific colors, specific ways to how you want to execute that.
Exactly. Edit with an intent.
Exactly. And if you start with that fundamental, it'll build from there and the rest becomes easy. And I just try and tell people that and to work on the fundamentals more in Photoshop.
Yep.
So then when you go back to watch a Flern and all these different people, it is
Shout out to Aaron.
A lot more things.
All right, so man, you led right into our topic for tonight. So we were sitting here kind of bouncing ideas on what the main topic tonight was going to be. And we kind of settled in on the importance of color in your photography. And I mean, there's a lot of interpretation into what that is. And, you know, the first thing I want to say is, John, kind of give us a rundown on why is color important, not how you get there or that, but more of why, you know, why is color important to your photography?
Well, in general, color is the main thing, period. We're probably one of the most visual defined creatures on earth. Human beings seeing more color than any other creature. And a lot of that's based on so we can interpret fruit and different plants and things better than other animals. Us and gorillas and a few others are the only ones that can see a wide variety of color and spectrum. So because of that alone, we have the gift of color in a sense, more than any other creature on the planet. So because of that, we can hone in and tune in on color more. So if you edit your picture well, just with color, forget everything else, forget skin and softening and retouching and all that nonsense. Just color alone, if you can get that right, your picture will look a million times better and stand out so much more from anything else.
Okay, dead silence. Yeah, no, color is so important to images. I mean, even when you're shooting black and white, color is important because, you know, whenever you do the conversion, unless you're just shooting black and white film to begin with, you know, the color is going to convey differently as you convert it, you know, so understanding the colors there is important. But one of the things that I really think that you have to really look at is, I mean, we all start off shooting, then we learn to retouch, right? So skin correcting and smoothing and maybe some creative, you know, vignettes and lighting and whatnot. And, you know, we're like, okay, man, I'm getting good. I'm awesome. But where do I go to now? That's when you start getting into, okay, well, let's get creative adjustments. Let's do color grading. What can I do to bring this together and make it pop and really take it one more step up the ladder, you know, to greatness, you know? And color theory, that is that next rung on the ladder to get you up there, you know, to take you to the next level whenever you're doing photography. And I mean, color's very, very important. And I know John kind of led into it, but there's so many things that color conveys subconsciously. So, you know, color conveys mood. It's one of the biggest ones, you know. So you do bright and warm and it gives you, you know, nice warm feelings, and you do cool and, you know, dark and it gives you moody and sad. And, you know, you can add a whole different mood to a shot just by tweaking the colors of the shot, you know. So color is a lot more important than a lot of people realize.
It defines,
you know?
Style in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
People's styles are very defined by the color.
Yep.
More than anything else. Because, I mean, you can go through whatever touching. Your picture is going to look that much different from someone else's until you start playing with the color.
Yeah, correct. Exactly. Oh, defining style is a big one. And you kind of led into it with the cinematography, you know, 2-color video. And, you know, typically, or I mean, not typically, but very commonly, it's teal orange. Yep. And then you translate that into photography and people setting a style. Case in point, what's his name? Hugo. I believe he's Eastern European or Russian, shoots beautiful women. And every single image is extremely saturated teals and oranges.
Yep.
Beautiful women.
It's a lot of people, including myself, the picture.
And that's his style. And you see one of his shots, whether his name is on it or not, and you know it's his. Because one, just the way he shoots those women, but two, that extreme color editing that he's done to every single image, and every single one, it's the same theme. Extremely saturated teal and orange.
Yeah, I think also the eye's drawn to it a lot because
we're working in digital.
Mm-hmm.
Digital space really isn't friendly to the eye. So the first thing we're trying to always do a lot of times is convert that digital color space over to more of a film color space. So we're trying to take that RGB more over to a CYMK type of layout. That's how, I remember that was the biggest thing with especially film back in the day when people were really against digital cameras. Digital cameras were very new. And it was video and digital. It looks too video and digital. It took a while for companies and editing softwares and everybody to figure out how to get the digital over to film. And it wasn't until they figured out ways of how to manipulating color grading and going deeper into that.
That's why all the Visco filters were so popular in the beginning.
Yep.
Because they were all trying to mimic old film, look. So I actually stopped on this shot because I felt like this is a great image for what we're talking about, because when you first look at it, the color is not over the top, but I know looking at it, there's a lot of color grading that happened here. And that's what I want to point out is it looks and feels very natural. And at first you don't realize that there's been color work done here, but it obviously has. And if you saw this shot without the color work, it probably would have been kind of flat and blah. But because of the color work, it brought it up that next notch. So I kind of wanted you to kind of talk about this, since it is kind of more of a natural look and not that over the top, color grading,
Yeah. So, funny thing about this shot. So this was in Paris. This is at the Eiffel Tower. And if you see, there's a little shadow right behind the subject.
Right here.
That was a security guard that wouldn't move. And we're like, Monsieur, can you get out of the way? And he's like, oh yeah. And just kept
and then just sat there smoking a cigarette.
I'll take you out. And I could have took him out more, but I was like, let me leave that. Let me just a little signature funny thing there. But anyway, so basically, this shot just came out really, really well, especially for the fact of that area of shooting is crazy crowded, and it's almost impossible to get a shot with nobody around.
Yeah. And
so it was really tricky to pull off this shot. It's a really ginormous. It is the tourist attraction for that area and for everybody to get photographs and stuff. So shot it with two Godoxes, two little 8200s, just running around France shooting with them. And one's on the side, one's off to the side, and kind of see where the light's hitting off of the wall. And yeah, it just came out really crisp. The clouds and everything was just really on point. Nothing's fake. And then from there it was just pushing the color up. So once again, this was probably 3 different color grades.
Mm-hmm.
Usually I start with the color correction. That color correction is usually where I first add kind of like a teal and orange. And then what's happening with that is I'm just trying to get a basis of where the color is going to go. So I'll kind of line out a teal and orange, usually using just maybe curves, maybe like curves and levels or something like that. Once I kind of get that down, I'll then go back in and I'll start playing a little bit with lighting. From the lighting, I'll then go back in and start another color grade, usually with selective color. And then what I'm usually doing is from the teal and orange. So here's another little trick. I'll take the teal and I'll take whatever color format layout I'll start with, right? And then I'll work backwards, adding more color in a sense backwards from that, what I just said, from switching from a RGB to a CYMK.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason being is because it'll start to give you a little bit more of that realistic, not realistic, but just that filmy look.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'll kind of go through a retouch, sharpening, whatever else I'm going to do to the subject, whatever. And then I'll do a final color grade where I'll then do it backwards again and add more of the teal and orange or whatever effect color I want to pull off. And then that usually gives me kind of the overall image. Yep. So I'll kind of play, you know, I guess you could say definition of what color is going to be, then manipulate color to fit more into a film aspect, and then kind of a final color just to give the style.
Yep. Very cool. Yeah. That again, I wanted to bring this one up because it's one of those shots that you look at it and it's not one of those over the top color grades. But looking at it, I was like, there's a lot of color work that happened here, but it still retains that natural feel to it, you know?
Yeah. Some of it's also like picking colors. So
yeah,
once I kind of have the overall grade that I want, I'll then go in and okay, I'm a separate. A lot of times this is where selective tool and all that comes in handy, because I will go through and I will separate the trees. I will separate her skin. I'll go through channels necessarily, completely separate her skin and make that a whole nother layer that I'll put to the side. I'll separate trees, sky, whatever. I'll separate each of them. I'll grade a little bit of them each, put them back in, then a full grade on top, and and keep going from there. So learning how to separate, picking the colors. I know it's a pain in the ass basically to have to separate everything and then try and color them separately and put them back together again like a puzzle. Yeah. But if you're willing to put in the work, the outcome a lot of times is a great picture.
Pro tip: learn channels and paths, because once you learn to work with channels and paths, you can create paths in the beginning and you can use them infinitely within that shot. Every time you need to adjust that region or area, you've already got a path. You don't have to reselect it each and every time. So, yep.
Yeah, that was my question, but you answered it there, John. Just separating everything, obviously breaking down the image. You can tell that a lot of it was separated: the sky, the bushes behind her, even her, the walls, etc. So.
All right, I'm going to bring up John Harville's question real quick because this goes into color. So John has started to really work a lot with gels, and I know that that's something that John Darko also does.
Yeah, John's been mentioning it to me a lot.
Exactly. So here he said, I start film this spring semester. Do you think transition of gels in photography to doing film will be simpler, but with continuous lighting instead of strobing the light?
Okay, this is an interesting question. So is he asking this for video and film, or is he asking this?
I think he's asking going from a photographer into working in film. Okay. So he's doing gels with strobes currently.
Yeah.
And he's going to be going into film in school next semester. So he's wanting to try and get an idea of transitioning from using gels with strobes to using continuous light, obviously, with gels, etc., for film.
Gotcha. Okay, so
do they interchange? Like, is it the same concepts? What's that transition like?
Gotcha. So lighting is the same as far as the disciplines of where you should put what and why. That's all the same. That doesn't really change all that much. The difference that changes drastically, I would say more than anything, is power in a sense, because there is no manipulation of power necessarily with video light. There's adjusting power as far as dimming and brightening, but it's usually to whatever solid of that color, that light is, instead of turning power down that then really much focuses the punch of how that light is coming out. So it's a big difference. But at the same time, I'll say it's easier. It's easier in film. It's way easier in video and film to play with lighting than it is photography. I think a combination because one is strobes compared to continuous. Yeah. Two, because your camera is shooting at a way higher dynamic range, which you're going to learn, John, the more that you start getting into video, the difference of how to shoot in super high dynamic range with the log formats compared to the way photography works. So because of that, you're already taking in way more light and everything else. So when you set up your lighting and everything else, you're going to see it right off the bat compared to in photography, and you don't. You got to play around, keep shooting and whatever till you get it. So it is technically easier. Where you're going to run into trouble would be post. Is that when you start bringing in a post, you start pushing up colors and moving things around, then it can start getting a little cumbersome, and you got to kind of find style with it and some other things and so forth. So that's kind of the way the best I could tell you. Start if you're playing with gels, especially for video and film. You're always telling a story, even to an extent much more than photography, because it's a moving image. It's a moving image that's doing something towards some kind of path goal. So whatever that moving image is, and whatever you're trying to tell in story or whatever concept with that image, the lighting plays much, much more to setting the mood, to explaining the situation, the background, whatever. So you're going to be more specific towards, okay, this is supposed to be a night shot. This is gloomy. This character is entering a bar. It's a seedy type of situation. So the gels I'm going to use have to reflect that. So it's probably going to be more greens and blues, or not even really more greens and reds than necessarily blue or other types of colors, because they do signify so much, as you said before, Josh, and they become more and more important when you're telling story.
Yep. Very true. I brought this shot up because it's a more extreme version of both color grading, but I also kind of felt that you shot this the way I know you tend to shoot a lot of gels, where you actually use continuous LED lights with gels over them.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of felt like this is something that you did, and I just wanted you to kind of give a rundown on how you created this shot, why you created it, why you chose those specific colors.
This is a funny story.
All right. I like funny stories.
So he is actually a very known gospel artist. He is actually right now like number 2 in the Billboard charts or something like that for gospel. His name's Jonah. Really talented gospel artist. Super easy guy, like real mellow dude. He's a funny guy to be around. Because I tell him to do something, he's just like, all right. No matter what I got him to do. But he's a real nice guy. But anyway, this was I actually don't shoot photography with continuous light anymore. The reason I got away from it was just because I wanted power levels a certain way in punch, and working with a main strobe. And I've been working more now. You know, I know that the trend right now in photography is boosting up to a way high dynamic range.
Yeah.
But I guess because my eye is so used to it in video, I've strayed completely away from that. And I'm almost very dark. I'm very f-stop A, you know, ISO as low as I possibly can get it, no matter what situation I'm in, yada, yada, you know, that kind of thing. So
I'm glad you're on strobes now for your gels, because the first time I saw you shoot gels on LEDs, I'm just like, I don't know if I want to shoot with, you know. I remember that very specifically. I was just like, what is he doing?
Yeah, I mean, you can still pull it off. Don't get me wrong.
No, you definitely can, you know, and you actually showed me that you could, because, you know, I took a few shots that day also and was surprised with what I could do with, you know, the initial raw files coming out of it. But,
yeah, and
you know, before that, I was like, is he smoking something?
Here's the best thing I can say to that is that if you're using a mirror camera, if you're using a DSLR, you're going to have troubles. That's all I can tell you. If you're using one of the newer mirrorless, it's a lot easier to pull off continuous light. Continuous light and the new mirrorlesses are wonderful, and a lot of people are doing it now and having fun with it, and that's cool. It makes it easier because you see the light and you see where things exactly are. So it's dope. It's a good thing. But I was using a DSLR at that time. So I just kind of trained myself out of it. So now I just use strobes for anything that I do in photography, and then continuous is just video. But so this was strobes. Gels, the gels were positioned kind of angled off back a little bit from him and then facing towards his back. I like the gels to be kind of gradual. So if you looked at the original picture of this, the gels are actually much, much lighter on him. The light that you see hitting him is a lot lighter. And then I like to bring it in more later, so I can just control it better. But the funny story with him was they didn't know what they wanted to do for their album cover. They had no clue. They had absolutely no idea. So he was just like, give me something epic. And I'm like, okay, could you explain that more? And he's like, nah, just something epic. And I'm just like, okay. And all they gave me was they knew what color scheme they wanted, but that was about it. So I said, all right, I'm about to give you epic. Game of Thrones is on. And that's what I did. And that background is actually like, I think it was from some kind of like stock wallpaper thing that was Game of Thrones.
I was gonna say it's got a Celtic rock in the background,
so yeah, that's kind of what I did. But yeah, so they liked it, so you know it was good. But
I mean, it's a dynamic shot. Now I wanted to clarify one of the things you said. So you said you started off quote unquote light with the gels. Now, did you mean on the saturation or the actual luminance when you said started off light?
The luminance, the power. So I'll start low, work my way up in a couple test shots, and I get it to where it's just accenting the side of him.
Right.
I don't get it where it's full on burning in a sense right on top of them.
Right. And then
it's harder
and then you dodge it or other adjustments to bring it up.
Exactly.
Right.
It's a lot easier to do it that way than the other way.
Another thing I actually wanted to talk about was actually the saturation, because a lot of times you'll find that as you start to increase the power using gels, you actually tend to, for lack of a better term, blow out the color.
Exactly.
So at this point, it's more of you're just getting that initial hue in there, which then you can bring up the saturation of that hue in post. Correct?
Exactly. That's why, honestly, I've been using more 8200s.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love those lights.
Instead of using whatever more powerful 600, 400, whatever.
I recommend those to everybody, especially those starting out. They're like, what's a good light to start off? Start off with. I want to get into off-camera flash. I'm like an 8200.
Yep. Yeah. So I've mainly been using them for most of my gel work. I don't really go to any of the bigger lights. I use the bigger lights more for the flood and for the main.
Are you still using the 12x12 sheets, or did you get the actual gels for the 8200?
No, I got the gels for the 8200
because
so,
I've got actually two different kinds. I've got every single one of the flash gels, and that's the flash gel brand, where it's the high temp gels that actually fold over the bulb.
Yeah,
I don't use them in any modifier, dude. Those things are awesome.
I haven't tried those as much. I've mainly been using the little.
Yeah, it's like a 4-inch reflector that has gels that insert in it.
Yeah, it's like a little.
Yeah, I've got those as well, and those actually work really well. But
really
what I found is I actually bought 3 sets of those, and I've gotten to where I'll double or triple up on the gels in one light.
Exactly, I do the same thing.
There's a little pro tip secret for you: buy a couple sets of them and stack them.
Exactly. Take the little honeycomb thing out, put a bunch of them on there, and slap them on. Yeah, that's exactly what I do. So I've mainly been using that more than I've been using, like a strip light with a big gel in it and a 400.
You start to really lose a lot of color when you go that route.
Yeah, it's too much power. I know a lot that do. Like, I know you're about to have Robert on. I know Robert is using like 4 and 600s and he's doing more of a duo tone. But I don't like to do the duo tone as much just because depending on the client I'm shooting, they a lot of times want to see them more. So it can't be as stylish. I got to keep the style, but still keep the face or whatever.
Yeah. John says, get the Roscoe sample pack.
I haven't tried that out. I'm going to have to try that out.
Cool. All right, guys, we're going to keep on going, but I see there's still quite a few people watching us live. If y'all have questions, make sure to drop them in the comments. We'll pull them up and get them answered for you. Yo, Eddie, I know I've been kind of talking and getting into things. I like to talk, but you got any questions or anything you want to throw in on this right now?
Not really. I mean, I love the gel photo. I guess the only question I had before you interrupted me, like you always do.
I know I'm an ass.
No, John. Are we looking at a 3-light setup here or 2?
3 light. So
3 light.
it's 2 lights for the gels, 1 main light overhead. That's kind of the plug, basically.
Gotcha.
I will say this.
I don't want to. He might get mad at me.
Whatever.
You guys are going to have Robert on later on. Robert put me to another program, plugin that I've been using a lot for gels, lighting, accenting, all that good stuff. Oniric. I love Oniric.
Spell
We
that.
actually did that, right?
Oniric. It's a new program. It just came out. It's only been out for like a couple months.
Okay.
In the middle of the pandemic.
Actually, in the comments, type that out and throw it in the comments so other people can look it up if they want to.
Actually, for some reason, I don't have comments. I can see the
okay. Then
comments,
spell
but
it
I
out
can't
to me.
type in it.
Spell it again.
Oniric.
IRIC.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I threw it in the chat right now, so y'all can check that out. Google it. ONIRIC. It is a software that John here and also Robert, who will be coming on in a couple weeks, both use for a lot of these really awesome gel colored shots. So
Yeah, it's basically a lighting program that creates like really high intense dynamic lighting.
oh shit,
It does it on the spot. Like
you're a cheater.
The plug-in up.
You're a cheater.
Don't get me wrong.
I
I've been doing it before.
complete respect for you. You're using plugins.
Here you go.
Yeah, you're not a pro anymore.
Hardy, hard.
Yeah, no, I am not anti-plugin. I am find whatever tool gets you the result you want and use it.
Exactly. And before we had to do it the hard way. It's hard to pull it off because what you usually got to do is you got to do an accent line first of whatever color, then from that color bleed it in and then opacity and all that kind of stuff. Then I usually use like a gradient map over. Here's another trick. Use a gradient map tool in Camera Raw. Because it's more of a sliding tool and it'll allow you to grade it in more gradually than if you just use the regular gradient tool in Photoshop. But you had to do all it usually took 3-4 steps, man, to
I gotta
get
show you some tricks in Photoshop then.
Yeah, I mean it's like
gradient map tricks actually.
Yeah, it takes a lot of steps to get that real cool accent lighting and you know that you see in composite work and stuff. That shit is work. And Oniric just cut it down in half. Like,
yeah, I mean, honestly, if it gives you the result that you're looking for and it saves you time, absolutely use it. You know, so if you're compromising on the results, then you need to second think it. But if you're getting the results that you want, then use it.
You still need to learn the fundamentals.
Oh, absolutely.
Whatever, because then you're not going to know how to adjust things properly. And a lot of times, I always tell people, always start with fundamentals first. Not even so much because the fundamentals are the way you got to do it and yada, 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 because Photoshop is one of those things. It's like 12 ways to skin a cat for whatever you're trying to do. But it helps your eye, it trains your eye to know what to find and what to look for and what to do, to fix, adjust, whatever. Where if you got something that's kind of cheating for you and you're not learning it the hard way in a sense, your eye's not there. So you're going overboard a lot of times.
Yeah.
Which is why when people slap on LUTs and stuff, it looks crazy because they don't know how to fix and adjust because they never train their eye by doing it the hard way.
Yep. Cool. So John, I'm going to hit you again and say, are there any shots that come off the top of your head that you want me to yank up real quick and we talk about? And then we'll wrap this up. We're at about an hour and a half now. So, you know,
go to the car one.
The Ferrari.
Yeah. The Mustang or whatever.
Mustang. I didn't see a Mustang. I saw a yellow Ferrari.
Was it Ferrari? I thought it was a Mustang.
No. This one right here.
Yeah, it is a Ferrari.
You see that little dancing pony on the front?
I see it. It's
oh, come on now. Actually, that looks like a 512. But yeah.
It's the cheaper one.
That's not a cheap. They're not cheap. None of them are cheap. Come
None of
on.
them are cheap, but it's the cheaper one out of the Ferrari.
Well, that's one of the only front engine Ferraris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll pull up this one just because cars are the hardest effing thing to composite on Earth. Cars are hard. A car, when you see people doing this type of work and stuff for cars, and to give you guys an idea, nothing in that image is real except for the model.
And he's got her sitting on a trash can when he took this shot.
Yeah. Anyway, what makes it so hard is figuring out exactly the dimensions between the model and the car and the size that the model has to be to the car. Then the car is on an angle of perception. So then the perception to where the car is to the model, and then
bending the shadows, bending the reflections,
bending the car.
Yep.
To get it to fit. So to give you an idea, I had to literally create lines of perspective just to make this shot work. So I took that background. That background is about 3 different pieces. It's that desert. It's 2 different deserts actually connected. The mountain parts and then the sky. It's all separate. So I'll put all that together first. Then I take the car. And then I have to literally draw lines. I drew out all the different perspective lines that need to be there to fit where it's at. Then I had to go back and just look at various shots of models and stuff like that on cars to see the scope of perspective of how big the model is to cars. So then I had to match that to a bunch of different shots to figure out which one works the best. Then once you get all that straight, then is literally the process of bending the car and bending the car and bending the model to get them to fit in perspective correctly. That shit was work. This looks very simple, and it is a simple shot technically, but it is one of the hardest little composite shots I've ever had to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was for a girl group called Vivid. They ended up breaking up like right after, so I ended up not doing much with it, but like I did all this work for them, and he was like, "Oh, we're breaking up." It's like, that's wonderful.
You get paid first.
But yeah, this was a lot of work.
Yep. It's a really cool shot, and I mean, obviously, you've got those initial wows. Like people look at, they're like, "Oh, look at that car! It's amazing!" And they see the model, they're like, "Oh my God, she's so hot!" And then you start to see the color, and the color is just like, "Oh wow, that's intense," and it kind of leads you away from some of the maybe little misses and stuff, So there's a lot of stuff that honestly you can hide little mishaps or inaccuracies or whatever by drawing people's attention away from it with other creative techniques.
Yeah, Yeah, it was really tough, man. I had to kind of do this by the numbers, where usually I could cheat more.
You're painting by the numbers on this,
and this was tough, man. Tough shot. So that I guess go to one of the fashion ones.
Yeah, I got you.
Or you want to go posters?
I like all of these, but I want to go to the couples because I really like those. Where they at? These, yeah.
Gotcha.
These shots right here. One, the styling is obviously, this is very well styled. This was a designer or something that, wasn't this from Paris?
Yeah, this is Paris Fashion Week.
But then you chose an excellent location for it, and just the positioning and the lighting and your edit and approach to it. I love this.
So this is interesting. Basically, this was for a thing called Modelpreneur Bootcamp. This is actually how I met Siobhan, which is the one that asked the question. And a lot of, man, I'll say this, Fashion Week in Europe was a ball. I had a lot of fun. I met a lot of people that have become really good friends, and people that I've maintained relationships with since. And it's been a good thing, man. So I was looking forward to going again, and then COVID. So, but this was pretty neat. So this is an arboretum that literally is in the middle of Paris. and they were doing a runway show on the other side. It was broken down into like 4 different sections, and so one section they're doing a runway show, the other they're like going over stuff and all the changing and all that stuff. And then for this modelpreneur boot camp, we came in and was kind of working with them in a sense, and then kind of not. It was interesting, but basically we took a bunch of the models that were in Fashion Week. We all broke into groups, and they had kind of a workshop that was going on. So what happens is the models go into the workshop to get into Fashion Week in a sense. And so then they do the workshop, and then in the midst of that, they're going to different auditions and everything else and doing shows in Fashion Week and so forth. And then we're running around, photographers kind of documenting it as well as shooting some of the shows. And then I ran off and did my own thing.
You always got to.
So it was cool, man. But yeah, it was cool. This was the first time, like, all these are real professional models, and I was the shortest one there. I'm 6 foot, and you're the shortest person there. They're all like 6'2", and then the girls are in heels, so they're like 6'4", and like it was interesting. So it was a good time, man. And yeah, this was the first time. I don't really shoot fashion. That's not really my thing. I do it every now and then, but it's not really the main thing. It's more advertisement stuff that I do and just creative stuff. So it's been a learning curve with fashion, and it's been a very interesting thing because I have some fashion people that are not used to my style, so they love it because it's so different from what they're used to seeing in fashion. And then I have others that hate it because it's not the standard for fashion.
Yeah.
So I found myself having to change and learn to do more fashion stuff and work with more designers. Since then, I've had a lot of designers hit me up. I've been working with magazines, some different stuff. And I've had to really start tweaking my style and learning some different new tricks and things just to do this kind of work. So
I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at John Harville. European tall. I felt like a midget living there. Yeah, I feel you on that. But another thing that I feel, okay, so you said that some of the designers loved that you weren't the status quo in your style, and then others hated it. And I feel like that's where you have to not completely give in, but maybe like hybridize it, kind of do the standard status quo, but throw your own little style flares on it. So you still make it your own.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm starting to get there. It's definitely I've gone about retouching a little bit different, especially since going more into fashion. Because they got to be so perfect,
Well, if you need some retouching lessons, you got my number.
Well, sir, I shall do that.
Oh shit!
I shall go way down into Arkansas.
Actually, you know what? I'm gonna pass you off to Eddie. You can get lessons from Eddie.
Wow, you hear that?
He's in there checking his phone right now.
You want to let him treat you like that? He's like, I could pass you off. Don't ever treat you like that.
Yo, the funny thing is that Eddie's retouching skills are top notch, and it's funny because he and I we approach things differently. Mm-hmm. I'm a frequency separation guy, and then I finish up with some dodge and burn, and he's a dodge and burn guy that recently has played more with frequency separation, I guess, whenever he's been, he's learned some new frequency separation techniques and what the capabilities of it is. So he's starting to incorporate that into what he does, and vice versa. I'm incorporating more dodge and burn into what I do. So, we have fed each other a little, tip and trick here and there from opposite sides,
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. I appreciate it, guys. I already told you, Josh, I wanted to hit you up and.
Yeah, man. We've always fed off each other. You can hit me up anytime. I know I can hit you up anytime. So
appreciate it.
Yep. All right, well, guys, I'm gonna pull this down and just throw us up on the screen here. Anybody got any final comments or anything they want to say before we wrap this up tonight, guys?
My food.
Awkward silence.
I'm looking in the comments first, see if everybody's saying anything.
I think we covered everybody in the comments.
Just want to say thanks for having me, and everybody, especially thank you for turning out on a holiday.
Yeah.
And so forth. This is awesome. How many people in total, Josh?
I have no idea because I'm not looking at all the platforms. We still have like over a dozen people watching live right now.
Nice.
So
Nice. So yeah, man. So thank you everybody just for turning out, especially given the fact that it's a holiday and everything else. And yeah, man. So yeah, anytime people can hit me up. Got any questions?
yeah, definitely hit him up. Y'all can find him like on Instagram. You can find him on his website. What's your website again? Okay, don't find him on his website. Find him on Facebook or Instagram. John Darko Chapman.
I'm just I'm saying it out. John www.johndarkocinema-photography.com.
There you go.
Yeah, my on Instagram.
Yep. Yo, Eddie, bro, you got anything you want to say before we wrap this up, man?
Not at all, man. It was a pleasure. Quite a bit of people on here as well. Again, just like last week, it keeps on growing. So
Yeah.
definitely appreciate that and more feedback. John, like I said, man, it was a pleasure just watching your work. I am a big fan. If you pull up his photos real quick one more time, Josh,
Yeah.
there's I think it's a samurai one.
Oh, the samurai swords. Yeah, let me.
Big fan of that shot, so I wanted to give you Matt props for that one.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
I know it was somewhere in there.
yeah, I was just going the wrong direction. You sent me so many images. There we go. All
Well,
right.
not that one. There was another one. There
What?
was one. There was another one. I think he was standing in a dojo. Keep going for me.
Oh, I know. It's towards the front. I got you.
Which one is this?
That one.
Right there.
Oh,
That one.
wow, that's funny because that is a very old picture.
So I actually had a question. You said in the beginning that you did some internship for DC. Is that what it was back in the day?
Yeah, DC Comics.
Yeah. So how does that transition into your kind of like your photography here, man? Because when I look at your work, that actually just DC Comics, a couple of these images kind of screams it. Do you ever think about that when you're editing or retouching?
Not for a long time, and then it just started like, oh, I guess it is. It's like I had to accept, like, it is what it is, bro. Like I come from that background. I tried to fight it for a long time. I tried to make my stuff look more natural and more real.
Gotcha.
And all that stuff. And then finally, I was like, you know what, fuck it, let me just lean into it. And just been trying to do that ever since, man. But yeah, basically what happened was I first wanted to be an illustrator. I wanted to draw, all that kind of stuff. I was doing that a little bit here and there. And I was when you're interning like that and stuff, you're mainly just inking. You're the inker. Yeah, there's a Kevin Smith. You're just the inker. So I was doing that a lot. Big shout out. I mean, unfortunately he's passed, but Martin King. Martin King used to own the comic book store on South Street in Philadelphia, which is a very famous comic book store, Atomic Comics. It's been there forever. And Martin was the owner, and he used to draw for DC. He drew Superman. He was part of when Superman died and some other things, and real kind of legend in Philly. And he ended up becoming a big mentor to a lot of kids, and I was one of them. And it was funny. I ended up winning the contest. He heard about it, and he was like, "Come, we all hang out in the comic book store, kind of thing, back in the day." He's like, "John, come over here." He's like, "Did you draw this?" I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "Come with me," and kind of took me under his wing, and I did quite a bit and learned a lot from him, man. And a lot of other guys that he worked with over the years. But just being young, I quickly realized, like, I don't want to be in a room all day drawing. And I started getting into film and martial arts. I was always doing martial arts, but I ended up this is a real roundabout story. But I ended up meeting Robert Samuels, who's one of the most renowned black stuntmen in the world, also from Philly. Found out through people I knew, yada yada, that I was doing martial arts and blah 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 blah. And he took me under his wing. This was like when I was like 18, 19. And that's how I kind of got into film and doing stunts and all that, led me into wanting to do film and all that. So in the midst of that, I was still doing comic book work stuff, but I didn't really like drawing anymore. I just got tired of it. And so that kind of brought me over to computers. And this was at a time when, like, Photoshop literally just came out. It wasn't even called Photoshop back then. It was called like Adobe, like Magic Works or some shit. And you know, that was kind of the start. And it was like I started learning how to color, and then just how to, you know, color images and things like that. I started doing some of that. I did it for a couple semi-known comic books, a lot of small underground ones, like for DC that was under the other publication. Was it Dark Knight? So I did Razor, I did Predator, Aliens vs Predator, some different stuff like that. Yeah. So you know, that kind of slowly took me into work.
Didn't you also do some video games and movie posters, etc.?
Yeah. So Ubisoft, I did some stuff for Call of Duty and a few other things that I worked on. But that's like working with a team and stuff like that. I'm not by myself.
But it was still experience and your contribution to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So learned a lot. Definitely learned a lot, man, from people that are beasts at this stuff, man. Make me look like nothing. I'll try and get a couple of them on the show for you, man. They are amazing at what they do. That's a whole nother level, because all I try and tell people is if you want to be like one of the top dudes at this stuff, at some point you got to get into 3D work.
Yeah.
You have to. If you're really trying to be like top dude in this stuff. I'm not necessarily trying to do that because I do so much more photography, and I love doing photography and just being a cameraman and video and all that. So I'm cool with that. I don't like getting into the 3D stuff because it gets complicated, man. But if you're trying to be top dog in this stuff, like most of the guys that they're all 3D animators.
Yeah.
That just so happen to do composite work.
That reminds me, I've got a guy on my friends list I need to hit back up, and he actually works for Disney, and what's the one that did like Toy Story and all those? What was that? How? Pixar. He worked for Pixar as a 3D guy. So, all right. Well, brother, I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on after Thanksgiving. Thank you, everybody that has joined us after Thanksgiving. We appreciate you all. Definitely make sure that you're subscribed, that you're part of the Facebook group, everything else, so you know when we're coming on. You can ask us questions, etc. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your holiday weekend. Make sure and catch some nice Black Friday deals. Guys, y'all want to give a little shout out before we cut this off?
Appreciate you guys. Appreciate everybody being on here. Next week, make sure to join us. And again, John, thanks a lot, man.
We got Martin coming on next week, don't we?
Is the Martin?
Yeah, Martin Poole from down in Perth, Australia, fashion photographer.
Aussie.
Yep.
I talk to Martin all the time, man. He's a good guy.
He is a good guy.
So,
guys, love you, appreciate you. Y'all have a great evening. We'll talk to y'all later.
See you guys.
See you later, guys.